One of my earliest memories is from around 2000, and it's me as a toddler lying on the floor of my living room drawing on a big mat thing whilst Disney's Tarzan was playing in the background on VHS. My grandma was there. Phil Collins's wonderful voice was belting out Son of Man, and I was having a great time. There's something so weird about moments from your very early life that feel really tangible, whilst also impossible to go back to, as you can remember the individual time so clearly, but everything else around it is just a blur. You can't properly remember the situation at hand, you just remember the dominant emotion of whatever you were feeling at the time. It's not my first memory or anything, but it's one of the clearest when someone mentions nostalgia, or things that you're nostalgic for. It's why Tarzan remains one of my comfort movies now, why I think the soundtrack is the single best soundtrack of any Disney film, and it's a source of happiness if I ever need it. Nostalgia is generally considered a really great thing. You're harking back to past times that were positive, no one's ever nostalgic for something bad, and it's always the best version of that thing you remember. It's always the best food you ever had that's been discontinued. It's the best TV show you ever watched because TV was better when you were small. Or it's one of the best experiences you ever had before you had to deal with the general busyness of life. I mean, that's literally why this video's in 4x3. I'm desperately trying to recapture that nostalgic time of the late 90s and early 2000s. Nostalgia can inspire you to start doing something out of nothing, to finally finish a project you've been procrastinating on, or just create a window of calmness during a bad time in your life. It's always there, never changing, never questioning. It's just how you see life at fixed points without fault. But that's where it can be not so great as well. The things that we reminisce about with such fondness would obviously not be as good if we went back and saw them through our eyes now. That food would be fine, but you might now understand why they discontinued it. You might still enjoy the TV show, but you suddenly realise how poor the writing is, or you suddenly see all the other things going on at the time of that wonderful experience that you had. Your parents' stresses, how the weather was actually a bit cloudy instead of perfect, you cried a lot for some reason, but you don't really remember that, you just remember how great everything was. Nostalgia can sometimes cloud decisions that make it really hard for people now to exist. The ways social and political ideology, mainly on the right, is made is on the basis of, well, back in my day we didn't have these problems, etc, when obviously they did, but they were young, so life was pretty good. So many times you hear about people doing awful things in the name of nostalgia or clinging to the past because it was better, when in reality they just have memories of being young, because they were 23 with their whole life ahead of them instead of 59 and fears of a changing world. So that's when it can be a weapon that needs to be looked at and not just universally celebrated. But being nostalgic in your day-to-day life, that's fine. Over the last few years, we've all seen a rise in discussion about how when you mature, you should leave behind all the things your younger self enjoyed. Whatever they are, you'll get influencers or politicians or just people in your own personal life telling you to grow up, do what's expected, and stop clinging to the past of being a kid or something like that. And whilst it's obviously, of course, important to focus on what's happening now, keeping your life in order, there's nothing wrong with remembering good times in your life, even if they weren't as perfect as you made them out to be. So, whatever your Tarzan movie is, remember it fondly, take lessons from it and grow. regardless of how perfect it really was, your version of perfect is important to you.